Ode was the kind of town where everyone knew everything, or at least thought they did. Its red dust roads curled like secrets around ancient trees, and its people lived with ears sharpened by years of storytelling and tongues oiled by the spice of gossip. Nothing stayed hidden for long. Not stolen yams. Not a pastor's wandering eyes. And definitely not love. Especially not Amara's. She was the kind of woman who walked with her chin high and heart steady. Not because life was kind to her, but because she had learned early how to fight for her peace. A schoolteacher by trade and caregiver by instinct, Amara was respected, admired, even. People whispered her name with a mix of reverence and envy. Mothers prayed their daughters would grow up like her. Fathers warned their sons she was not a girl to play with. She was purposeful, controlled. Until Chuka came. He wasn't from Ode. Nobody knew where he came from, exactly. One day he was just there. Sleeping in the back shed of old Baba Sani's abandoned kiosk, fixing broken windows for a few naira, drawing water for people too old to carry buckets. He was quiet. Oddly quiet. And though his clothes were worn and his sandals weary from too many journeys, his eyes carried something strange. Peace. When Amara's bicycle chain snapped on her way back from school one Thursday afternoon, the dust caked on her skin and exhaustion in her bones, it was Chuka who appeared. She didn't even hear him approach. "Let me help," he said softly, already kneeling before she could protest. She hesitated. Who was this man? What did he want? But he didn't ask for her name or offer any flirtation. He simply worked. In minutes, the chain was fixed. He wiped his hands on his faded trousers and gave her a short, polite nod. "Be careful. The road gets slick when the sky sulks like this." And then, like a breeze, he was gone. Amara stood there, her heart strangely unsettled, not in fear, but curiosity. Who was he? The next day, she saw him again, this time at the market, helping a woman carry heavy baskets without being asked. Then again, fetching water for an old man with swollen legs. He wasn't loud, didn't laugh much, but wherever he went, someone's burden grew lighter. That weekend, she asked Mom and Ketchy at the market about him. "That one," the woman said, her eyes narrowed as she arranged her tomatoes. "They say he has no house, no wife, no people. Sleeps in an old shed. Works hard though. Quiet. Too quiet." And just like that, the whispers began. By Sunday, the church choir's gossip section had exploded. Amara? With that beggar-looking man. He must have jazzed her. No job, no car, nothing, but she smiles when he passes. But Amara didn't care. Or rather, she tried not to. She had heard their words, felt their stares. But something about Chuka, his stillness, his steady gaze, the way he listened without interrupting, made her feel safer than she had ever felt with men who wore suits and sprayed money like perfume. She started meeting him more. Not dates, just conversations. Beneath the old mango tree, after school, or when he passed by her compound. No gifts. No flattery. Just presence. One evening, he looked at her and said, "You don't have to pretend with me, Amara. I see you." And for the first time in years, her shoulders dropped. In a town where a man's value came in the form of bank alerts, flashy cars, and cement blocks, Chuka had none of these things. No house. No car. No job. Just a smile. And loyalty that felt like shelter in a storm. In the days that followed, Amara found herself rearranging her schedule, not intentionally, at first. Just small shifts. Leaving the school a little later. Walking past the market even when she didn't need anything. Sitting longer beneath the mango tree. Because somehow, Chuka always appeared. They never planned their meetings, and yet, he was always there. And though he never once reached for her hand, or let his eyes wander below her neck like other men did, she felt herself unraveling with every conversation. He was unlike anyone she had ever known. Chuka asked about her dreams. Not the ones she told people in polite conversation, the real ones. The quiet ones. The ones she had buried under the weight of responsibility and other people's expectations. And he listened. really listened. "Why don't you paint any more?" he asked one day, glancing at her stained fingernails from art class. "I don't have time," she replied. "You mean you don't allow yourself time," he said gently, not judging. Just stating truth. That night, she found herself digging out her old paintbrushes from a forgotten drawer. But outside the sanctuary of their mango tree talks, reality was biting. People talked. Oh, how they talked. At the hair salon, while she waited for her cornrows, the girls were loud and shameless. "Amara is too fine to be moving around with that man nah. Abi. I hear he doesn't even have a proper phone. Imagine. She's feeding him, I swear." The worst part? Some of it wasn't entirely false. Yes, she had bought him lunch, once or twice. And yes, he didn't have a phone. Or a home. But what he had was something no other man had ever offered her. Presents. Her ex, Tund, had a car. An apartment in the city. The latest iPhone. But he also had 3 other women he forgot to mention. He took her on dates but never remembered her birthday. He praised her body but silenced her opinions. He kissed her lips but never held her heart. Chuka had nothing. Yet she felt more loved during a shared bowl of okra soup than all the expensive dinners Tund had ever paid for. Still, the weight of perception was heavy. Her mother noticed. So did her pastor. Even her students asked questions. "Teacher Amara, who is that man that walks with you? Is he your brother?" She laughed, brushing it off. But late at night, doubt crept in like the cold. Would this love survive the world's expectations? Was loyalty enough? Could she build a future on affection alone? Chuka seemed unaware, or maybe unbothered, by the pressure. One evening, as they sat beneath their usual tree, he said, "I know I don't have anything now. But I'm not staying here forever. I'm working. Saving. I just need time." "I don't care about what you have," she said. He smiled. "I know. That's why I'm scared." She didn't understand. "People who love you for your heart," he continued, "they're the ones you don't want to disappoint." She was silent after that. Not because she doubted him, but because she realized how much of herself she'd already given. Love without money wasn't a crime. But in Ode, it was a scandal. And the kind of scandal that stuck like palm oil on white cloth. But still, she showed up. Still, she smiled at him in public. Still, she stayed. Because in Chuka's arms, though they wrapped around her without gold or gifts, she felt like a queen. And that was something even money couldn't buy. The news broke at dinner. Casually, carelessly, the way life-shaking truths often do. Amara and her mother sat under the veranda, the aroma of ogbono soup thick in the air. The sun had just disappeared behind the hills, and the first signs of harmattan danced in the breeze, making the lantern's flame flicker. "Mama," Amara said cautiously, "I want you to meet someone." Mama paused, spoon mid-air. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Someone?" "A friend. His name is Chuka." For a moment, silence hung like wet laundry. Then, as if her body had been waiting to ignite, Mama Neka dropped the spoon with a loud clink. "Chuka?" she echoed. "The same one I heard about at the market? That poor boy who bathes behind Baba Sonny's old shop?" "Mama, please." But it was too late. "You want to shame me? After all I have done to raise you like a queen, you want to drag a beggar into this house? Ah, Amara, you must be mad." Amara's throat tightened. She had prepared for this, rehearsed every answer, every line, but nothing could have readied her for the fire in her mother's eyes. "He is not a beggar, Mama," she said softly. "He works. He's kind. He respects me." "Respect won't build you a house. Kindness won't feed your children. You think love is enough? You think marriage is a fairy tale? Let me tell you, when hunger enters a home, love escapes through the window." Amara stood. Her voice trembled. "I'm not marrying him today. I just want you to meet him." Mama Neka rose too. Her wrapper swayed with emotion, and her voice dropped, low, dangerous. Over my dead body will a man with no roof and no future carry my daughter's hand. You hear me? Over my dead body. With that, she stormed inside, her slippers slapping hard against the cement floor. Amara remained outside. The lantern's flame still danced. So did the pain in her chest. She had known her mother wouldn't approve. But she had hoped, just a little, that the love she and Chuka shared might soften the old woman's heart. Instead, it turned it to stone. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind wrestled between duty and desire. Between the daughter she was raised to be and the woman she wanted to become. She remembered how Chuka smiled when she brought him Puff Puff, how he listened when she talked about her father's death, how he touched her only when invited. No man had ever made her feel both free and safe. But Mama's words echoed louder than memories. When hunger enters, love escapes. Was she making a mistake? The next day, Chuka noticed the change. She didn't laugh as much. Didn't linger under the mango tree. What's wrong? He asked. She shook her head. It's just, Mama. He nodded. He understood. She doesn't like me. She doesn't know you. That's worse. Then he smiled gently. It's okay. We have time. If this is real, she'll come around. But would she? Because in Ode, a man wasn't a man until he had land, livestock, or at least a generator. And Chuka had none. Just a heart that beat differently. And a girl trying to decide whether love could really survive the fire. The mango tree behind the community primary school wasn't special to anyone else, but to Amara and Chuka, it was sacred. Its thick branches stretched wide like open arms, and in the harmattan months, its dry leaves rustled like old women whispering secrets. Beneath it, the world slowed. Time softened. And for a brief, precious moment, reality felt far away. That Saturday, Amara came early. She sat on the low stone they had claimed as their bench, and picked at the hem of her skirt. The air was dry, and a soft layer of dust had settled over the red earth. She was thinking too much. Chuka arrived not long after, carrying a small calabash of zobo and 2 cups. No plastic bottles. No pretense. Just thoughtful simplicity. I thought you might need something cold, he said. She smiled faintly and poured herself a cup. Thank you. There was a silence, comfortable, yet heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Amara turned to him. Do you ever hate where you are? Chuka raised an eyebrow. You mean being poor? She nodded, embarrassed. He looked up at the tree, then back at her. Sometimes. But I hate more what people think poverty means. Which is? That you're less. That your dreams expire because your pockets are empty. That love is a luxury you're not allowed to feel. She swallowed hard. You want to know something? He asked. Amara nodded, already bracing her heart. I had a home once. In Enugu. A job. Not big but enough. My father was a tailor. Taught me how to sew. I used to stitch uniforms for school children. What happened? Fire, he said simply. Took everything. The shop. The house. My father. Amara's breath caught. Chuka continued, his tone steady, like a man who had told the story so many times he could say it without flinching. My mother couldn't take it. Died 2 months later. I couldn't stay there. Too many memories. Too many ghosts. I'm so sorry, she whispered. He smiled. Not sadly, but with a quiet kind of pride. I came here with nothing. But I made a vow to never beg. Never steal. I'll build again. Slowly. With my hands. Amara reached for his hand instinctively. It was rough. Calloused. But warm. You don't have to do it alone, she said. I know, he replied, eyes soft. But I want to. So that when I do stand beside you, it won't be as a charity case. It'll be as a man who earned his place. Tears stung her eyes. Everyone talks, she said. They think I'm foolish. You're not. You're rare. But Mama. She's afraid. Most people are, when they see someone loving against logic. She looked at him. And you? Aren't you afraid? He laughed. Every day. But I'd rather be afraid and honest, than rich and fake. They sat like that for a while, side by side, hands lightly touching. Around them, the town moved on, unaware of the quiet revolution taking place beneath the old mango tree. Because in that moment, it wasn't about cars or houses or status. It was about shared pain, quiet dreams, and the kind of loyalty that doesn't ask for anything, except the chance to love and be loved in return. The days grew colder, and harmattan winds swept through Ode like a rumor hungry for more mouths to carry it. Every morning, the air tasted like dust and dry leaves, and every evening, the whispers about Amara and Chuka grew louder. They called her foolish. Said she had lost her senses. Some even said Chuka must have used juju, because, in their eyes, only a spell could make a woman like Amara fall for a man like that. But Amara wasn't under a spell. She was under conviction. Still, conviction didn't pay bills or silence relatives. Her aunt, Auntie Ifioma, showed up one morning, unannounced, as she often did. She came with palm oil, a Bible, and a voice that could wake the ancestors. Amara, she said, stepping into the house without invitation, I heard what you're doing. You want to kill your mother, ABI? After everything she's done for you. Amara stood, arms folded, already weary. I'm not killing anyone, Auntie. You want to carry disgrace on your head like Gala in Lagos traffic? A man with no job, no name, no plan, N. He has a plan, Amara shot back, fire in her voice now. He just doesn't have what you want to see. N. Plan that lives in shed and drinks sachet water. Amara's lips trembled, but she didn't flinch. I'd rather be with a man who's honest about his struggles, she said, than one who pretends to be a king while selling his soul for titles. Auntie Ifioma hissed and stormed out, muttering curses and prayers in the same breath. Later that day, Amara told Chuka what happened. He didn't laugh. He didn't sigh. He simply nodded and said, Let them talk. Let them measure me by my sandals. One day, they'll see what I'm made of. She studied him as he spoke, his shoulders broad, not from lifting weights but from carrying life. His hands, though blistered from day work, held purpose. He didn't cower. He didn't envy. He stood tall in his poverty, because he saw it not as a curse, but a season. And that, more than anything, taught Amara something new. There was pride in poverty, when it didn't break your spirit. At night, she remembered her father, how he used to say, the real crown sits in your heart, not on your head. Maybe that's why she kept showing up, kept defending him, kept hoping. Even when her own heart questioned if love alone was enough, Chuka's resilience was the answer. He was working, silently, picking up masonry jobs, mending torn roofs, helping people not for pay but for dignity. And slowly, quietly, he was saving. Not just money, but respect. Self-worth. His name. One evening, as they shared roasted plantains and groundnut under the now familiar mango tree, Amara asked him, Do you ever wish you had more? Not just for yourself, but for us. He paused, then looked into her eyes. I wish I could give you the world, he said. But I won't fake it to get there. I'd rather build something small, honest, and ours, than borrow luxury to impress strangers. Her heart broke a little, in the best way, because in a world obsessed with appearance, she had found someone who treasured authenticity, who wore humility like a badge, who carried his lack like a man waiting to earn, not inherit, his crown. That night, she whispered to herself, maybe love isn't blind. Maybe it just sees deeper than most people ever will. The line was drawn the moment Amara didn't come home on time. Mama Neka waited with her hands on her hips, the air thick with tension, the pot of egusi soup untouched on the stove. By the time Amara pushed open the wooden door, face dusty from the red earth, the confrontation was already bubbling. Where are you coming from? Her mother demanded. Amara knew the question wasn't really about where, it was about who. I went for a walk, she replied calmly, setting down her bag. With that boy again? Amara flinched. Not because of the question, but because of the venom in her mother's voice. Mama! You will not disgrace me, Amara, she exploded, slamming a pot cover against the sink. I didn't raise you to marry a man who cannot even buy you a wrapper. Mama, it's not about money. It is always about money, she shouted. Love does not fill bellies. It does not pay rent. When you fall sick, love will not buy medicine. You think you're the first woman to love a poor man? Go and ask them where that love ended. Amara stood her ground, but her chest tightened. Her hands shook slightly. He's working hard. He's trying. He's not sitting around waiting for a miracle. And you want to suffer with him? Carry firewood and cook with smoke because you love him? Amara, let me ask you, do you want to end up like me? Silence. That question hit harder than any slap. Because buried beneath her mother's anger was pain. Deep, generational pain. The kind passed down through sacrifices unspoken, dreams given up, and men who promised everything but delivered very little. Mama Neka wasn't just shouting. She was bleeding. Amara's voice broke when she finally spoke. I don't want to end up like you, Mama. But I also don't want to marry a man who looks good on paper and breaks me behind closed doors. Her mother froze. I've seen the kind of marriage you want for me, Amara continued, tears now clinging to her lashes. He has money, a car, a job, but no soul, no time, no respect. I've dated that man. He made me feel like an accessory, not a partner. She took a step forward. Chuka makes me feel seen. He makes me feel safe. He has nothing, but he offers me more peace than I've ever known. And then, quietly, isn't that worth something? Mama Neka looked away, her shoulders rising and falling with exhaustion. Love won't last, my daughter. One day, you'll wake up and resent him for everything he lacks. Or I'll wake up beside someone I don't love, surrounded by everything I never asked for, Amara whispered. That night, no more words were exchanged. But a line had been drawn. Between a mother trying to protect her daughter from repeating her pain, and a daughter willing to risk that pain for a kind of love that felt different. That week, the distance between them widened. Meals were eaten in silence. Chores became a language of avoidance. Amara knew she was standing on dangerous ground, but she also knew something deeper. Sometimes, to follow your heart, you had to walk away from where it was first formed. The dust of old now held invisible lines, between tradition and truth, comfort and courage, survival and something close to salvation. The invitation came in a crisp white envelope, sealed with gold. The moment Amara saw it lying on her mother's table, her heart sank. She hadn't seen that seal in years, but she knew exactly who it belonged to. Depo. Her ex. The one with the shiny car, a booming baritone voice, and a bank account that never ran dry. The one who had once looked at her like a prize, not a partner. The one her mother never stopped wishing she'd married. His company is opening a new office in Ode, Mama Neka said, smiling for the first time in days. He wants to reconnect. He's coming to dinner. Amara blinked. Mama, I didn't agree to this. I did, her mother snapped. Because you need to see what a real man looks like again. You're not married yet. You still have a choice. Amara wanted to scream. But she didn't. Because deep down, she knew this wasn't about Depo. It was about control. About reminding her that wealth still spoke louder than character in this town. That evening, she stood in front of the mirror, dress ironed, hair freshly plaited. She looked like someone preparing for a life she no longer wanted. When Depo arrived, nothing had changed. He was still smooth. Still charming. Still dripping in cologne and confidence. But his eyes? His eyes hadn't learned how to listen. They talked over dinner. Or rather, he talked about business expansions, international trips, luxury apartments. He laughed at his own jokes and interrupted hers. Then, when Mama stepped away to get dessert, he leaned in. You still look good, Amara. Still got that thing. She didn't respond. I've got a place in Abuja, he continued. New building. You'd love it. Pool. Balcony. You could quit your job. Do something easy, like fashion or PR. I like my job. He smirked. Still stubborn, I see. Then casually, he slid a small black box onto the table. Not a ring. Keys. To a Corolla. Parked just outside. Amara's stomach twisted. I want to start over, he said, eyes gleaming. I'm serious this time. No games. Let me take care of you. For a moment, everything froze. She looked at the keys. Then at him. Then out the window, where the sun was setting in streaks of gold over the dry earth. She thought of Chuka, his hands, his humility, his laughter when he told bad jokes, the way he looked at her like she was more than just a body or an accessory. Then she thought of Depo's smooth hands that had never known struggle. His smile that never quite reached his eyes. She stood up. Keep the keys, she said quietly. He blinked. Excuse me. I'm not for sale. Amara, don't be foolish. I've already made my choice. And it's not a car. Or a mansion. It's a man who sees me. Not as a trophy, but as a teammate. As she walked out of the house, her mother's shocked gasp followed her like an echo. She didn't turn back. Because that night, she made peace with something powerful. Love may not come wrapped in silver or sealed with gold. But when it's real, it doesn't need to be bought. The silence in the house was different now. It wasn't just tension, it was withdrawal. Mama Neka stopped talking altogether. She moved around Amara like a ghost, speaking only when necessary. Meals came without words. Prayers were whispered like curses. And every evening, the house echoed with unspoken disappointment. Amara felt it everywhere. The breaking point came a week after Depo's failed offer. She had returned from the school, exhausted after working double periods. Her bones ached, her mind was foggy, and all she wanted was peace. But peace was not waiting for her. Instead, she walked into a living room full of elders. Uncles, aunties, cousins, all seated like a tribunal. Her mother in the center, wearing her finest wrapper and a look of pained dignity. Sit, one of the uncles said. Amara froze. Mama, what is this? This is family, her mother replied, without looking at her. And family must speak when a daughter is walking into fire with her eyes open. The voices came fast, loud, overlapping. You're too beautiful to waste on a man like that. What future do you see with someone who can't even pay bride price? Your father would have rolled in his grave if he saw what you're doing. This is not how we raised you. Amara sat still, her hands clenched in her lap, her ears ringing, her heart pounding. Finally, she stood. I didn't ask you all to gather, she said softly. I didn't ask for your blessing. I didn't even ask for your opinion. But I'll tell you anyway. Amara, respect yourself. I am, she shouted, surprising even herself. For once in my life, I am respecting myself. The room went silent. She took a breath. You want to know why I chose Chuka? Because he listens. Because he works. Because he prays with me, not just for me. Because he sees me beyond my hips and my skin and what I can cook. She turned to her mother, voice trembling. You think you're saving me, Mama. But you're just trying to protect me from a pain that's not even mine. I'm not you. And Chuka is not Papa. Mama Neka's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Amara continued. You can all disapprove. You can all walk away. But I will not walk away from someone who has done nothing but love me right. With that, she walked out. Again. But this time, she didn't cry. She walked straight to the mango tree, her sanctuary, her safe place. And just as she reached it, there he was, Chuka. Sitting, waiting, as though he already knew. You okay? He asked. She nodded, but her lips quivered. They all hate me now, she whispered. No, he said gently, pulling her close. They just don't understand the kind of courage it takes to love someone like me." Amara leaned into his shoulder, letting the silence wrap around them like a blanket. And in that moment, under that tree, she knew. She hadn't lost anything. She had only shed the expectations that were never truly hers. The rain came suddenly, without warning, without mercy. It poured over Ode like a long-forgotten grief. Roofs leaked. Drains flooded. And Chuka's small shed, where he lived and stored the little he had, collapsed under the weight of the storm. By the time Amara reached him, his eyes were red, not from tears, but from defeat. Everything was soaked. His clothes, his tools, his notebook filled with plans and scribbles and sketches of a better life, ruined. He stood barefoot in the mud, rain trickling down his face like shame. And when Amara ran to him, arms wide, he turned away. "I'm fine," he said quietly. She stepped closer. "You're not." "I said I'm fine." "No, Chuka. You're not. And you don't have to pretend with me." He stared into the distance, chest rising and falling with unspoken frustration. The man who always smiled, who always bore his burdens like a silent soldier, was cracking. "This was all I had, Amara," he whispered. This little space. This was my foundation. Now even that is gone." She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "Maybe they were right," he muttered. "Maybe I'm just dragging you down." "Don't say that," she said, voice breaking. "I'm tired," he confessed. "Tired of fighting the world just to be enough for you." And then the silence, the kind that wounds deeper than words. For the first time, Amara saw it in his eyes. The fear. The fear of being the man she bet her future on and falling short. The fear of loving someone who deserved more than rain-soaked dreams and empty promises. "Let me help you," she said softly. "No," he replied, stepping back. "I don't want your pity." "This isn't pity, Chuka. It's partnership. It's what love looks like when it stops being poetic and becomes real." The wind howled around them, tearing leaves from branches, shaking trees, but her voice was steady. "We said we'd do this together," she reminded him. "Rain or shine, rich or poor." That wasn't just sweet words under the mango tree. That was a vow. And I'm not walking away now. Not when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. He looked at her, eyes glossy with emotion. "Do you mean that?" he asked. She stepped forward, grabbed his hand, and placed it over her heart. "Feel that? It's still beating for you." And just like that, the storm inside him calmed, even as the rain continued to fall. That night, they gathered what they could. Spread blankets across Amara's floor. Lit candles. Ate cold yam with pepper sauce. And laughed. Laughed. Because sometimes, love isn't built in mansions or sealed with rings. Sometimes it's built in broken moments, in muddy shoes and tear-streaked faces, in choosing each other over and over again, even when everything else is falling apart. And in that small room, soaked in candlelight and quiet resolve, something beautiful began again. Not the romance of fairy tales, but the grit of real love. The following months were not easy, but they were better. The rainstorms eventually passed, and so did the struggles. Chuka rebuilt his shed with help from a few old friends who believed in him. Amara, too, threw herself into her work with a new kind of fire, determined to show the world that her love for Chuka wasn't a burden, it was a partnership. They were building something, brick by brick, dream by dream. The gossip never stopped, of course. Every time Amara walked into the market, eyes followed her. Whispers followed her. The judgment followed her like a shadow she could never escape. But there was a difference now. She was learning to ignore it. One afternoon, as Amara returned from her shift at the clinic, she found Chuka sitting outside, the sun casting a warm glow over his face. His hands were rough with work, but his smile was still the same, full of hope, full of promise. He was holding a letter, his eyes scanning it with intensity. "What is it?" she asked, walking over to him. He looked up at her, his face lit with the kind of joy that made Amara's heart skip a beat. "I got a job," he said, barely able to contain his excitement. "A real one. A construction company." They're willing to train me. They see something in me. Amara's breath caught in her throat. She knelt down beside him, her heart swelling with pride. That's amazing, Chuka. I knew you could do it. But he shook his head, a look of determination in his eyes. No. We did it, Amara. This is as much yours as it is mine. If you hadn't stayed, if you hadn't believed in me, this wouldn't have happened. She kissed him then, not because he needed to hear it, but because she needed to feel it. His dream was taking flight, and she was part of it. The job was more than just an opportunity for money. It was a symbol of how far they had come together. From the days of empty pockets and constant judgment, they were now building something tangible. With his new job, Chuka's confidence grew. He started bringing home paychecks, no longer hiding in the shadows of doubt. He could afford small luxuries now, a few clothes, a better phone, food that wasn't just boiled yam and pepper sauce. But more than that, he was walking taller, speaking with purpose. It wasn't the flashy wealth Amara's mother had once dreamed of for her, but it was a wealth of character. And that was worth more than any car or mansion could ever provide. One evening, as they sat under the mango tree, looking out over the town, Amara spoke her heart. We did it, she said quietly, her hand resting on his. We're not rich, not in the way people measure it. But we've got each other. And that's the kind of wealth I always wanted. Chuka smiled, squeezing her hand. The kind of wealth that lasts. And it was true. They didn't need to be perfect. They didn't need to impress anyone. They were building something far more valuable than anything money could buy. It was in the quiet moments, the long talks after midnight, the laughter in the face of hardship, the shared glances that said everything without words. They had learned the hard way that love, real love, isn't about having it all. It's about fighting for it all, together. Ode still whispered. The townspeople still shook their heads in disbelief. But Amara didn't care anymore. Because when love is tested, and when it rises from the ashes of what was broken, it's stronger than any storm. And for the first time, Amara believed it, too. It started with a headache. Amara had been pushing herself. Long periods at the school, late nights helping Chuka study for his training exams, early mornings sweeping, cooking, surviving. She brushed it off, drank water, and kept going. But when she fainted on the third day, right in the middle of stitching up a patient, everything changed. She woke up in a hospital bed, white walls and fluorescent lights humming overhead. Her colleague, Nurse F, stood beside her, eyes wide. You're 2 months pregnant, she said, voice gentle. Amara blinked, trying to process. What? You're having a baby, Amara. Her hands trembled. Not out of fear, but a mixture of shock and something deeper, uncertainty. A baby. Now. With everything still fragile, still new, still rising like clay not yet hardened. When Chuka arrived, he looked like he had sprinted from the other end of town. Sweat dripped from his forehead, eyes darting until they found hers. You scared me, he whispered, grabbing her hand. Are you okay? What happened? I'm pregnant, she said slowly, testing the weight of the words. He froze, blinked, then sat down hard beside her, his face unreadable. For a long moment, he said nothing. Amara's heart clenched. She turned her face away. I know it's not perfect, she whispered. And we're not ready. And I. Chuka cut her off by gently turning her face back to him. I'm just overwhelmed, he admitted. Not because I'm scared of being a father, but because I've never seen one do it right. Amara's breath caught. My dad walked out on us when I was 6, he continued, his voice tight. And every day since, I've wondered if that's the only kind of man I know how to become. She reached out, touching his cheek. You are not him. He leaned into her hand, eyes glistening. I want this, Amara. I want us. And I'll fight every fear I've ever known to make sure I don't fail you, or our child. That night, under a sky splattered with stars, they sat on the small bench outside the hospital, their hands entwined, their world quietly shifting. They didn't talk about money. or what people would say, or what dreams might need to be postponed. They just breathed together. But faith would soon be tested in ways they hadn't expected. Word spread quickly in Ode, as it always did. "She's carrying a pauper's child," the market women said with smug lips. "Maybe now she'll come to her senses." At the clinic, Amara's supervisor looked at her belly, then at her, and sighed. "We don't have room for complications here. If you're going to be out frequently, you might need to consider stepping down." At Chuka's sight, whispers began among the older workers. "He can't even afford to marry her properly, and now a baby," one muttered. Even Mama Neka, upon hearing the news, shut the door in Amara's face. But Faith doesn't look at the noise. It looks forward. One morning, Chuka stood in front of the local church, holding Amara's hand, asking quietly if they would bless their union, even without a traditional ceremony. The pastor, moved by their sincerity, agreed. It was a simple affair. No lace gowns. No gold rings. Just palm wine, prayers, and honest vows exchanged under a mango tree. And as they stood there, bound by something deeper than wealth or approval, Amara whispered in his ear, "No matter what comes, we'll face it together." Chuka held her tighter. "I believe that. Because this love, it's already passed too many tests to ever break now." The sun that morning was deceptive, golden, soft, and gentle. It made Amara believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind them. She was 5 months pregnant now, and her belly had begun to bloom like a quiet miracle. Chuka had been working extra shifts, saving what little he could in a jar they kept under the floorboard. They'd even started joking about baby names, arguing sweetly over whether to name the child after Chuka's late grandmother or Amara's father. Life was still hard, but it was hopeful. Until the letter arrived. A plain white envelope. No stamp. No name. Just words typed neatly on a sheet of paper. "Your school is under investigation. Parent complaints have been filed against teacher Amara. You are hereby suspended pending review." Her knees buckled. By the time Chuka found her sitting on their doorstep, the paper trembling in her hand, she looked like she hadn't breathed in minutes. "What happened?" he asked, kneeling beside her. She handed him the letter. His eyes scanned it, disbelief sinking into his face like rain into dry soil. This can't be real." But it was. She wasn't told who filed the complaints. The educational board only said they had to act on formal allegations. They refused to disclose the details. And just like that, her source of income and identity was ripped from under her. That night, the silence between them returned. Not because of anger but because of fear. Real, crawling fear. Bills were piling. Food was measured. The savings jar under the floor grew colder each day. Chuka did his best to stretch every naira. He worked until his back screamed, until his hands blistered, until Amara begged him to rest. "I can't rest," he said, voice rough. "I rest, we starve." But exhaustion is a cruel master. One evening, he came home staggering. Blood on his shirt. A gash across his arm. A scaffolding had collapsed on sight. Chuka had taken the fall for a mistake someone else made. His arm needed stitches. The doctor said, "You'll need to rest it for at least 2 weeks." They stared at each other in the schoolroom, both afraid to say it. No school work. No construction pay. Nothing coming in. "I'm sorry," Chuka whispered. "I failed you." "No," Amara said, eyes blazing with pain and loyalty. "You stood for us. You didn't fail anyone." But inside she was breaking. One night, as she lay in bed unable to sleep, she heard a knock at the door. She opened it to find her mother, Mama Neka, standing with a basket of food. "I heard about the suspension," she said, her tone brittle. Amara stood, unsure whether to invite her in or close the door. "I didn't come to fight," Mama said. "I came because, no matter what, you're still my daughter. And I remember what it was like. To be pregnant. To be scared. To feel alone." Amara blinked, tears forming before she could stop them. She stepped aside. That night, her mother stayed, cooked soup, cleaned the corners of the room, rubbed shea butter on Amara's swelling feet. They didn't talk much, but there was healing in the silence. Later, as Mama Neka tucked a blanket around her, she whispered, "I still don't understand your choice, but I can see the strength in your love now. And maybe that's enough." The storm had returned, yes. But this time, they weren't fighting it alone. The night was heavy with silence. Amara lay in bed, her swollen belly rising and falling with each breath. Chuka, with his arms still bandaged and in a sling, snored softly beside her. The fan above their heads creaked rhythmically, cutting through the still air of their modest room. Then it happened. A sharp pain shot through her lower back. Amara sat up, gripping her side, sweat already forming on her forehead. Another pain. Stronger. Deeper. Her breath caught. "Chuka," she whispered. "Wake up." He stirred, mumbling incoherently. "Chuka," she cried, louder now. His eyes flew open. "What? What is it?" "It's happening," she gasped, holding her belly. "The baby. It's coming." Panic flashed in his eyes, but only for a second. Then instinct kicked in. He grabbed the small bag they'd packed weeks ago, just in case, and helped her to her feet. She leaned on him as they made their way out the door into the quiet night, the stars blinking like nervous eyes. But the nearest hospital was nearly 2 miles away. They had no car, no bike, not even a kiki. So Chuka did the unthinkable. He flagged down a passing motorcyclist and pleaded. The man saw the urgency and didn't hesitate. Amara clung to Chuka's back as they sped through the sleeping town, every bump in the road sending waves of pain through her. The contractions were coming faster now, her body tightening like a drumbeat too quick to follow. By the time they arrived at the hospital, she was barely conscious. Chuka carried her in, shouting for help. Nurses swarmed. One recognized Amara and quickly ushered her in. Chuka wasn't allowed into the delivery room. He paced the waiting area like a man possessed, his shirt soaked with sweat, one arm still in a sling, his eyes wide with fear. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Then, a cry. High-pitched. Beautiful. Terrifying. The nurse came out, smiling. "It's a girl." Chuka collapsed onto the bench, laughing and crying all at once. When they finally let him in, he found Amara cradling their daughter, her face tired but glowing. "She's perfect," she whispered. He knelt beside the bed and kissed her forehead. Then he looked at the baby. Tiny, fragile, and yet full of power. "I don't know what I ever did to deserve this," he murmured. Amara smiled weakly. "You loved. You stayed. That's what you did." For a moment, the world was quiet. Not because there wasn't noise, but because they had become louder than the noise. Stronger than the fear. Braver than the past. Mama Neka arrived later, her eyes wet with tears she didn't try to hide. She held her granddaughter with hands that had once rejected this future. "She's got your eyes," she said softly to Amara. "But that smile, that's Chuka." They laughed. And just like that, the air shifted. The room was filled with something new, something sacred. Love had brought them to the brink. Struggle had tested every vow. But here they were, with a living, breathing reminder that they hadn't just survived. They had created something beautiful. A cry in the night had become a song in their hearts. And for the first time in a long while, Amara and Chuka fell asleep in peace. Together, a family, no longer bound by what they didn't have, but by all they had built. The morning after their daughter's birth came slowly, softly, like the village itself was holding its breath. The hospital ward was quiet, the sun casting gentle shadows through the faded curtains. Amara stirred, blinking herself awake to the sound of tiny breaths and the weight of a new life lying beside her. Chuka was already up, sitting in a plastic chair next to her bed, cradling the baby like she was glass. "She didn't cry all night," he whispered, all filling his voice. "She just looked at me, like she already knew who I was." Amara smiled, her body sore but her spirit light. She does. You're her father. He glanced at her, emotion brimming. So, what do we name her? They had argued about it for weeks. Chuka had wanted something modern, something bold. Amara leaned toward traditional, something rich in meaning. But in that moment, staring down at the miracle they had created, the answer came to both of them. Ifyinanya, Amara whispered. Chuka's brows rose. Love. She nodded. Because that's what brought her here. That's what kept us standing. That's what she is. He repeated it quietly, almost like a prayer. Ifyinanya. Later that day, Mama Neka returned with a bowl of hot pepper soup, a wrapper for Amara, and a smile that carried more apologies than words could say. I've been speaking with the elders, she said, and they've agreed to a naming ceremony. Proper one. Even if it's small. Amara blinked. They agreed. Not all at once, Mama said with a smirk. But when they saw that your love didn't crumble after all the trials, even the old ones had to admit there's strength in this union. The news spread, as it always did, but this time it wasn't whispers of shame. It was murmurs of respect. They stayed together. She didn't run back home. He didn't leave her when things got tough. They named the baby Love. The ceremony happened 3 days later. Under the old mango tree where they once exchanged vows, the community gathered. No one dared mock them now. Even those who once scoffed at Chuka's tattered clothes now nodded at him with quiet respect. Amara wore a flowing white gown borrowed from a cousin. Chuka wore his best native shirt, pressed carefully the night before. Ifyinanya, wrapped in a yellow cloth, slept peacefully as the priest called out her name to the wind and to the spirits of the ancestors. Gifts were placed at their feet, tubas of yam, wrappers, even a small goat. It wasn't wealth, but it was acceptance. And to them, it meant more than gold. After the ceremony, Amara stood with her mother beneath the tree, holding her daughter while Chuka chatted with the village men. I didn't think we'd get here, Amara whispered. Mama Neka took her hand. I didn't either. But you taught me something, my child. What's that? That sometimes, it's not the man with the riches that builds a home. It's the man with a heart that refuses to give up. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. That night, as the stars lit the village skies and laughter echoed from every corner, Amara and Chuka sat outside their small house. Baby Ifyinanya slept between them, her tiny fists curled into peace. We have nothing fancy, Chuka said, but somehow, I feel like we have everything. Amara leaned on his shoulder. Because we do. The house was still. Not from emptiness, but from peace. 6 months had passed since the day Ifyinanya was born. 6 months of late-night cries, sleepy feedings, shared laughter, and quiet moments that stitched Amara and Chuka's hearts even tighter together. Outside, the rainy season had begun. The scent of wet earth drifted through the open windows, mingling with the sound of baby giggles and the low hum of a radio playing an old high-life tune. Chuka stood barefoot at the doorway, rocking Ifyinanya gently in his arms. She cooed at the sound of his voice. He often spoke to her like she could understand every word. You know, small madam, he whispered, your papa used to be known as the man who had nothing. Nothing but a heartbeat and a stubborn kind of hope. Amara leaned against the doorframe behind him, arms folded, smiling. And now? Chuka turned, that old boyish grin still alive on his face. Now, I'm the richest man in the village. I've got 2 queens. What else could a man want? She chuckled, coming closer. A fan that doesn't creak like it's about to die? He laughed. Maybe that. Things weren't perfect. The clinic had cleared Amara's name, but she had chosen not to return immediately. Instead, she ran a small herbal remedy stall outside their home, using knowledge passed down by her grandmother. It didn't make much, but it served the people, and healed more than bodies. Chuka was offered a more stable construction job by one of the elders who had watched him work without complaint, even when injured. He took it gladly. It wasn't wealth, but it was dignity, and a future. The villagers no longer whispered in corners when they passed. In fact, Young couples had started seeking advice from Amara and Chuka, the two who had loved against all odds. They had become a story, a lesson, a living folktale of their own. One evening, sitting beneath the same mango tree where they had been blessed and mocked and blessed again, Amara looked at Chuka and asked quietly, "Do you ever think about the beginning? When everyone said I was making a mistake?" He nodded, thoughtful. "Yes. And sometimes, I think they were right." She looked at him, surprised. "But not because I was a mistake," he continued. "Because love like this, it doesn't follow logic. It doesn't play by the rules. It breaks them, rewrites them. And sometimes people need time to catch up." Amara smiled. "Well, I'm glad I didn't wait for them to catch up." He took her hand, fingers rough and scarred but full of warmth. "Me too." As the sky turned deep purple and the fireflies began their nightly dance, baby Ifyinanya gurgled in her sleep, her tiny hand resting on her father's chest. In the distance, someone in the village called out a joke, and laughter followed. Life was moving, slow, steady, unfolding like the petals of a stubborn flower. Once, Chuka had been the man who had nothing. But love, raw, tested, honest love, had given him everything that truly mattered. Not the house, not the car, not the job, but a home, a family, a legacy. And that was more than enough. If this story touched your heart, if you felt even a flicker of emotion, please don't scroll away. Hit that like button, it helps more than you know. And if you want more powerful African love stories, rich with emotion, tradition, and truth, then make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. This is just the beginning. The next chapter might just leave you breathless. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you would have done if you were in their shoes. The most thoughtful comment gets a special shout out in our next video.